Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our review of the Saucony Peregrine 13 GTX version. So the Saucony Peregrine is a long-running line of trail shoes from Saucony. It's built to be a versatile, all-rounder trail shoe that can handle a nice mix of terrain and distances and paces. And there's usually a Gore-Tex version of the shoe in the range, which is what I've been testing. It's the first time I've tested a Gore-Tex Peregrine. The previous versions I've tested have always been the standard versions of the shoe. The Gore-Tex shoe costs £140 and $160. More expensive than the standard version, which is £130 or $140. It's also a bit heavier. It weighs in at 308 grams or 10.8 ounces in my UK size 9. It's going to be substantially lighter if you opt for the non-Gore-Tex version. It's got the same stack height though, which is 28mm at the heel and 24mm at the forefoot for a 4mm drop. Overall, the changes to the Peregrine 13 this year compared to the 12 have increased the stack a little bit to provide a slightly softer ride while also making the shoe lighter. So even though this is a Gore-Tex shoe, it's actually still pretty lightweight at 308 grams for a trail shoe with decent lugs and a Gore-Tex liner. That's really quite lightweight. So you've got a mesh upper with a Gore-Tex membrane, as you'd expect. It doesn't actually feel too stiff to me and hasn't really been that noticeable on the run, having that Gore-Tex membrane there. You've got some extra protection for high abrasion areas, a toe bumper, and quite a lot of padding around the back, especially at the heel there. It's really quite a comfortable shoe around the foot when you put it on. And you've got a really significant heel counter. It really adds a lot of structure there, quite hard to press the shoe in there, so you're getting a lot of support. The midsole is made from Saucony's Power Run foam, and you've got a Power Run Plus insole, so slightly softer feeling just under the foot. And then the Power Run midsole, you've got 1.5mm more cushioning on the Saucony Peregrine 13 compared to the Peregrine 12, so just adding a little bit of cush there. And you've got some slight sidewalls of foam there to create a bit more stability, and then you've got a rock plate to protect your foot when you're running on the trails. And the outsole is Saucony's Power Track outsole, which has changed compared to the Saucony 13. You've got slightly fewer lugs and then slightly more spaced out, and there's different sizes of lugs going on here, with smaller ones there in the middle and then larger ones on the outside. Outside lugs have also been rounded slightly a little bit, which creates a slightly smoother ride on hard surfaces, and the extra space you have between the lugs on this shoe should help with shedding mud when you're on muddy tracks. It doesn't get too clogged up, which was a little bit of the problem with the Peregrine 12 for me. It did get clogged up a little bit. But overall, the outsole is built for a nice range of terrains. There's also the ST version of the Peregrine 13 that is built more for muddy tracks, but as someone who spends a lot of time in the mud usually, the Peregrine has always been quite a reliable shoe in its normal version to grip well on the mud while also being nice and grippy on harder stuff. And a very comfortable and good fit in my normal size with the Saucony Peregrine 13. That's my normal running shoe size across the board. I've got my normal EU, UK and US size in this shoe, and I've had no concerns with it at all. Same size I wear for pretty much all Saucony shoes and previous versions of the Peregrine. Nice amount of room up front in the toe box, so you're not going to have any risk of your toes hitting the front of that down hills, and a good cushion hold at the back with this padded collar on the shoe and padded tongue. So yeah, no problems at all for me, true to size. I've done around 50k in the Saucony Peregrine 13, and that's included a couple of 10 milers. It's mostly been on forest tracks near me that have been ranging from quite muddy to nice and hard packs now. It's been a bit sunnier lately. Also, I've done some grass running and a bit of road to and from the forest as well. So probably only one was really wet in the shoe where I really got to experience the Gore-Tex liner. It's dried out a fair bit recently here in the UK, so I've got one run in with some puddles and some rain to test that out, but mostly I've been running in the dry. On the upper, I'd say it's actually not that noticeable. Like, you don't even really notice the weight of it. The shoe is slightly heavier than the Peregrine is without it, but I don't think it's a heavy shoe at all. It feels quite light on the foot. The upper is flexible. It doesn't feel stiff or annoying or rub in any way on the foot. So that's good. And it's, it can be a tad warm. On my last run, I think I was running around 10 miles and around 20-degree heat, and it probably was a little bit warmer than other shoes, but not something I'd really probably have noticed if I wasn't thinking about it so much because I'm wearing a Gore-Tex shoe. So overall, yeah, no real problems with the upper at all. And then obviously you do get the benefit of the protection of that Gore-Tex liner. So when I'm running in really muddy conditions, there's usually at least one puddle big enough that it will go over the sides of the shoe, which would be annoying. So you're still going to be a little bit careful, but where it really comes into its own for me is running through wet grass, because that just gets cold, seeps through the shoes, and when you've got a Gore-Tex liner, it just keeps it all at bay. Your feet stay nice and dry, nice and warm. You can just run through, whether it's dew in the morning on grass or just wet grass in general. Even if it's quite long, you can plough through that without worrying about having wet feet for the rest of the run. So that's probably where I enjoy Gore-Tex liners the most. I know there'll be different use case scenarios for different people on this, but Yeah, so actually outside of those periods, I don't really notice the Gore-Tex liner that much. But maybe come winter, he'll get a bit more use. But like I say, usually in the winter, there's big enough puddles that I'm still going to be pretty careful to not let water go in over the side of this shoe. Underneath that upper, you've got a really nice, pretty balanced ride from this Power Run midsole. It's not the softest or liveliest foam in the world, but it feels nice and light. It gives a little bit back. I've done a couple of runs with faster sections in them, like a progression run, moving from easy to steady pace by the end on some nice undulating terrain, and it just gives you the platform to go and run pretty fast if you want to, while also being nice and comfortable for long runs at easy paces. It's just a good midsole. It's not that exciting or thrilling or anything like that, but gets the job done, picks up quite nicely when you're going up hills, and you've got enough cushioning there to really pound down them and not really worry about any damage being done to your legs. The 4mm drop, I'd say, has been a little bit noticeable for me when I'm on runnable terrain, so I tend to prefer a slightly higher drop. Even just 6mm, I think, takes the edge off it a little bit for me sometimes in terms of the impact going through my calves as a heel striker. But when you're on uneven ground and that, I don't really notice the 4mm drop so much. But yeah, it's something that is a little bit lower than I tend to go for in my shoes. Didn't notice a huge change in the ride compared to the Peregrine 12 in terms of cushioning. Like, I'd say it is a little bit more cushioned, but it's quite a marginal thing. I think what I did notice a bit more was that I feel like the Peregrine 13 is a fair bit smoother on the road and hard surfaces in general. I think it's got a slightly less intrusive ride. I found like the Peregrine 12 could get a bit snappy on the road, and the lugs could feel a bit out of place on the road. And actually, I didn't find the Peregrine 12 a superb road to trail shoe. I found it much better just on the trails, whereas I do think this was great on the road. Like, I've not been on very long stretches on the road in this shoe, but it didn't feel like it was skittish or hard. You know, the lugs were, annoying me in any way on the road. So I do think the slight changes made to the outsole have made it a slightly smoother ride on hard surfaces, without really taking away any of the grip you have on soft surfaces. So Peregrine is a shoe that I say I've been in very deep mud. Like in one of the earlier versions of the shoe, I did the train race in Wales, where the mud was knee high, and it was really good. It grips really well for a shoe that does have this amount of grip on hard surfaces as well. So there aren't many shoes. For example, in that race, the first 5-6 miles are on the road, and then you're into very deep mud, and it's quite tricky to find a shoe that balances that so well as the Peregrine. And that is still pretty much the case with the Peregrine 13. I've never really felt the need to go and get the muddy version of the shoe, because even when running in the mud around here, it grips really quite well. Over time, it can get a bit clogged up, although that is less the case with the Saucony 13. I have noticed that it sheds mud a little bit better than the Saucony 12 did for me. But even then, if you go through deep mud for a long period, it will start to feel a bit slippy and get claggy underfoot. But for the most part, it's pretty good in soft conditions whilst being nice and grippy on hard stuff as well. So Peregrine 13 is a little incremental update to the line that kind of builds on the changes that Saucony made last year. Like Peregrine 12's big plus point was that it was a fair bit lighter than the Peregrine 11, and Saucony's continued that trend with the new shoe, which is, I think, important, because this is a shoe that's got that lightness as part of its heritage. It is quite a nippy shoe while still being built up and cushioned and gripping well. So the change has continued in that direction, and it works well. It's a bit more cushioned, it's a bit lighter, and even if you're getting a Gore-Tex version of the shoe like this, it's just over 300 grams in a UK 9 or that's a US 10. That's pretty good going for a shoe with a big outsole like this and a Gore-Tex liner. Gore-Tex, whether it's for you or not, will really depend on use case. I probably wouldn't go for the Gore-Tex version myself, because when I'm on the forest trails, I think I'd rather just have the lighter shoe and just take my chances with the muddy puddles. If you're running on grass a lot, I definitely would consider the Gore-Tex version. It really stands out at that time. Or if if you're always running in the rain, then yeah, that's another thing to consider. But even in the UK, I didn't feel it was enough rain for me to go and get a Gore-Tex shoe. It's more for me when running through grassy fields and keeping that fresh morning dew at bay in particular. So yeah, that's something to consider. It's a little bit more expensive. You can get a slightly heavier shoe and a slightly hotter shoe as a result. So that for me, I'd be looking at probably the standard version, just as it fits my use case a bit better. Midsole is good. You can get lively midsoles from Saucony itself. Like I was recently testing the Exodus Ultra 2, which has a midsole that blends some Power Run PB with the Power Run frame on it, and that just has a bouncier, livelier feeling underfoot. It's got a slightly higher drop as well. It's gripped well for me in similar conditions, so I probably all round prefer the Saucony Exodus 2. Peregrine is a slightly lighter shoe, especially if you opt for the normal version, and probably has a slightly more bite to its grip. And the Exodus Ultra obviously is built more for the long haul, but actually I think it's quite similar in how I'd use the two shoes. They're both good for short stuff, long stuff, pretty comfortable, quite lively and fast shoes when you want them to be. I think I just slightly prefer the ride feel of the Exodus Ultra because it has that bouncier midsole feeling at times. Other couple of good options that I consider really nice all-rounders, there's the Hoka Speedgoat 5, which is more of a smooth ride than the snappy feel of the Peregrine 13, and That's a good shoe. That doesn't look like it's going to do fantastically well in soft conditions, but has gripped pretty well for me in them. The Peregrine 13 does have better grip on that front, but yeah, the Speedgoat I think is a little bit more comfortable and smooth when ticking through long, easy miles in particular, if you're eyeing up things like ultras and that kind of thing. And then another good shoe is the Innovate Trailfly G270, which is a zero drop shoe, which isn't something I traditionally would go for, but I don't know, the ride of it felt really good to me. And sometimes the way the geometry is built on shoes, the actual drop doesn't matter so much. It felt kind of equally low drop to the Peregrine for me, even though this is a 4mm drop, and Innovate's grip is fantastic on a range of conditions. Like basically there's no kind of trail that I wouldn't be happy going on in the Innovate G270 just because the grip is so versatile. It's a nice streamlined, narrow shoe, feels very nimble on the foot as well, and yeah, that's another shoe I really like, which I'd go for out of them. I don't know, it's a bit of a close call there. I think they're both great shoes. Maybe if you're looking more at things like fells and muddy running, the Innovate just has a little bit of an edge, but it's pretty close all round, I'd say. Maybe the Peregrine has a slightly more comfortable midsole. And a good, cheaper alternative that I've tested lately that really did remind me of the Peregrine line in general was the Evadict MT Cushion 2 from Decathlon. Now, this is a shoe that just costs just under £100, and it's got quite a similar setup to the Peregrine in many ways. It's got a smaller midsole for sure, and it's a less comfortable shoe for if you're looking at long distance stuff, but if you're mostly running up to around kind of 10-15 miles, I think it's certainly comfortable enough in my experience. The grip is quite similar to the Peregrine in that it grips really well in a nice range of things, comes a little bit unstuck if you're in deep mud for a long time, but generally not a problem. So that's an option to consider if you don't want to spend huge money on your trail shoe. If it's more of an extra shoe in your lineup and you're more of a road runner, you just want something on the side, then that's a good option to consider as well. Peregrine, like I say, a bit more comfortable, slightly livelier midsole than you get on the Evadict shoe. Overall, there's nothing really to fault here with the Peregrine 13. I think it's a really good shoe. I think it's a nice little update from Saucony. It's not a massive update. If you're looking at deals and you find a great one on the Peregrine 12, I'd pick up that shoe. I don't really think you're losing out on much by not going for the latest version. Like I say, the Gore-Tex version, you'll know if your use case demands it, but I will say in its plus point, the upper really isn't that noticeable. Even the extra weight wasn't that noticeable. It's really well designed, very comfortable upper with that Gore-Tex membrane. Slightly hotter, but that's to be expected, and yeah, it wasn't something that really put me off the shoe that much. Good update. Peregrine 12's out there for a deal, I'd grab it. Lots of other good shoes out there, but you certainly won't be let down by the Peregrine 13. That's our review of the Saucony Peregrine 13. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please do like, subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.